Vitality swept Team Spirit in the IEM Katowice Grand Final, winning 3-0. An absolute dream start to the year for the Hive. But I believe there were 6 main factors to why Vitality won. I'm Astronaut CS, let's talk about it. Before I get into it, in this video I'm not going to be taking into account things such as the Spirit players maybe not fragging. I want to look at it a little more holistically and more so from the side of Vitality, because I actually don't think Spirit played that poorly. So let's get into it then. The first point is the fact that Vitality won all 6 pistol rounds played across the 3 map. Not only that, they then also won the anti-force buy rounds 5 of the 6 times. And the one time they did lose it, they then won the force buy back thanks to an Apex 1v2 with a P250 on Dust 2. So why is this so important? Well, now in MR12, winning pistol rounds and the anti-ecos now weigh so much heavier than they used to before, as you're pretty much guaranteeing yourself a 3-0 start to the half. So doing this on both sides means you have just under half the amounts of rounds you need in order to get to the magic number 13. It's so hard to win a map if you lose both pistol rounds and the force buy rounds after them, so that was a massive part to the domination. Spirit even won more gun rounds than Vitality in the whole series, but it just shows that Vitality winning all these pistol rounds and anti-force buys aided them so much towards their victory. And when Vitality start off each half in such a strong way, it's so hard to catch them. It's not a surprise though when Vitality has 3 of the best pistol round players in the world right now in Zawu, Mizzy and Robs. The second key factor was that Vitality kept their anti-eco losses very minimal. They were able to minimise the rounds in which Spirit seemed to always just find such success and have done for the last year or so. Even if Spirit brought these rounds close, they were able to clutch these rounds out. An interesting part was that when they did win these rounds, they were celebrating them like they were gun rounds. Vitality knew that Spirit posed such a threat, usually on these kinds of rounds, and yet they were able to really keep the ship steady and not allow Spirit to come back into the games through these kind of round victories, which they probably usually shouldn't win, but have such a high success usually. Now before we get into the next factor, if you haven't already, please leave a like and subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get back into it. Factor number 3 is that on the contrary, Vitality were able to win their own force buys and half buys due to really well coordinated rounds. Whether they found holes in Spirit's setups, found really good timings, or had done their research and weaved their way into a win, they just seemed to be deadly on these kinds of rounds, which felt so odd due to the contrast, which is, as I said before, that usually Spirit are this effective. Wins like these just push Spirit further and further into the depths and made these comebacks that they had to try pull off way more difficult when you lose against the anti-ecos and the anti-half buys. Now when we look into the fourth factor, this is the first and only factor that is based around a player. However, this is due to the fact that Vitality leaned way more into giving Zawu the orb on the T side. Their CT sides, he'd play just standard as he usually would, picking up the orb. But on T sides, Vitality usually just go with 5 AKs, and then pick up an orb if they win a round. But this matchup they completely seemed to change it and flip their philosophy and gave Zawu the orb pretty much whenever they could on the T sides, it felt. This also in part would have thrown Team Spirit's game plan, I'm sure, because in prep they would have known that Vitality usually run a 5 AK setup on T side, and this is probably definitely a factor in terms of finding opening kill successes, and that nuke game was a massive example of that, as Zawu was playing AWP on T side, which we aren't really used to seeing all that often. Then the fifth factor, and another crucial one, is that Vitality were winning a lot of their rounds cleanly. The reason this is such a big factor is because usually Spirit are a team that can whittle away the economy of their opposition. Even if they lose rounds, they usually are able to get a few kills and keep their opposition's economy very limited. However, Vitality were able to find so many rounds where they lost maximum 1 player, and this was just allowing them to have gun round after gun round after gun round, it felt. Then this becomes a huge problem because there didn't feel like there was any particularly free rounds for Spirit to try get back into the game, which they're having to scrap in every single gun round, which is usually what they make their own opposition do. So this added another layer on top of the difficulty that Spirit were facing the whole grand final, and gave Vitality even more advantages. Then the final factor I'll be covering is probably the most obvious one, but to me the cherry on the cake: the honeymoon period. Now what I'm talking about for Vitality's instance of it isn't that everything was just working and opposition didn't know any counters because they were a new team or anything like that. Because we saw that phase earlier in the tournament found counters really easily on Anubis and on Dust 2, and Spirit tried to replicate that on their Dust 2 as well. But what I'm talking about in this honeymoon period was the fact that it's about the atmosphere and the vibe that was present across all the players. There weren't any famous Apex moments, there weren't any desk punches thrown, there didn't seem to be anything like that. They seem to have such level heads throughout the whole game. With Mezzi and Rops on the team, you're obviously going to get two players that are very level-headed and very calm on stages like this. But, you know, there was a couple times, for example, where they kind of just seemed to laugh things off if they were going the wrong way. On Dust 2, when Rops tried to throw Mezzi the AWP to save, and they lost it, they just laughed it off and moved on, and then they won the round. So it just didn't seem to be anything so building up, didn't seem to be any tension. It was so relaxed and comfortable almost for Vitality. And this, for me, is what I mean by the honeymoon period for Vitality, which just the atmosphere was just on point, which seems to be such a weird thing to say, you know, that they were enjoying playing with each other. You know, it seems crazy to say, but we've seen so many teams in the past and currently that have tensions within them, but Vitality just seem to have not stumbled across that block just yet. Anyway, that is all for today though. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please leave a like, and if you're new around here, please subscribe to see more videos like these where I try to break down more the holistic sides to why teams win tournaments. Thanks again though, and I'll see you in the future. Thank you.